My name is Mohit Talwar, and I'm working as a CTO for Hayes, which is a specialist recruitment company. Yes, and everybody asks me, why you are a CTO and why do you care about UX? You should all be about technology. And I think that's a very interesting question, and maybe the topic of next discussion. That maybe you are in a field of technology, or maybe you are in a field of product development. The only thing which makes you successful in any organization or company is how close you are to the users. Now, technology is one of the enabler, product is one of the enabler, but how close you can get to the users, that defines the success of company, success of platform, success of individuals, and success of you as a product manager. So very important topic. So next time somebody asks you, you are an engineer, why do you care about UX? Yeah. So everyone should care about users. That's how you become successful. So our topic today is very important: creating the right user experience for your product. So today we are not going to talk about, or I'm not going to tell you about what is the difference between UI and UX, what is the difference between product and UX, and all those normal things that you hear on a day-to-day basis. But what we are going to focus is very, very simple methodology to define the right UX for your product and how does it impact the end user. So I think before we start, this is the most important quadrant before we explain a bit more about this topic. But most important quadrant which you should embed in your brains if you are a good UX expert or a UX designer, or if you care about users. Very, very important. Now on this quadrant you see is on the right hand side is the great UX. Now that quadrant says that the users are able to use your product with utmost ease where the need is high. So for example, let's take an example of buying a product from Amazon. Your need to click on buy now button is most when you're using Amazon. Your need to click on your details of the credit card and successfully enter that and click on submit is the highest level of need as a user you have, or as a buyer you have, when you are on Amazon.com. Now, if you go on Amazon.com and you get a bad experience where your need is high, that's bad UX. That's your right quadrant. If you see here, this is your bad quadrant, bad UX. Now, if the need is high and you give a great user experience, that's one click buy for you. You are amazed, you achieve user delight. And that's what is about creating good user experience or great user experience. It's not about how beautiful is the UI. It's not about how good the user felt when he came onto the site. It's about how it worked and what experience it offered to the user when they came to your site or to your product to achieve a specific goal. That's the main part. So the great UX is all about that. It's not about great UI. It's not about great buttons. It's not about it's how you interact to achieve a specific goal. That's about great UX. Now, when you look at this quadrant, people get confused why it doesn't matter. See, the ease of use was not there, but users were not using that feature at all on your product. Does it matter? It doesn't matter. So what this quadrant helps you is not only achieving what great user experience is, but also prioritizing where you should focus on. So today we are going to talk about simplifying all of it. So the motto of our life is to make everyone be a UX expert. Yes, it's very, very simple. You don't need to be a great artist to be able to do it. You don't need to be a great designer. You don't need to be specialized in photography. You don't need to be specialized. The only thing you need to work around is that how close you are to the users, how much empathy you can gain for your users, and how better you can design product which exactly meets the user needs. So very simple process, 6-step process we are going to outline, which any one of us can use. Very, very simple. We are going to simplify things today. So first one is interactions, define interactions. Then we'll go on to do the sketch. And then we will say, how does prototype help us to achieve those things? First 3 steps, very, very simple. Yeah. Followed by very important aspect of UX, context, feedback, and iterating on your UX. But at the heart of it, you see an arrow going right in the center, which achieves user delight, and that is user research. We are not going to talk about user research itself today because very vast topic, but what I wanted to emphasize is this simple steps is ingrained within user research being done at every single step. It's very simple 6-step topic. So we start with first step. What we do is we define minimal viable feature. So when we are achieving or when we are going and attacking the UX area, what we are looking at is individual features. You are creating the best experience for your users for whole of your product, but that is an aggregation of what experience you create for one specific interaction on your product. For example, if you take an example of Amazon.com, you go and you can search for products, that's one feature for you. Then you can look at the product detail, read about the reviews, that's one feature. Other is you can click on checkout or add your items to basket, that's one feature. Now, every feature should have the best possible interaction and experience a customer can have. That's what great UX is about. So let's look at one user story which says, as a website user, I want to book movie tickets online. Let's say we are designing a great UX for booking a movie ticket online. So as a website user, who am I? I'm a website user, simple user story format. I want to do what? I want to book movies ticket online. But what struggle does it alleviate for me? So that I don't have to queue up at the cinema. Now think about it, that what will be the best user experience in the case of this user story, which you have heard from the user. The best user experience would be so that part of this user story is filled or met without any complaints from user. I, as a user, booked the ticket online. It was a very easy process. But then I went to the cinema and then somebody asked me, can you show me a paper ticket? I can't use your phone. Do you think it is a good UX or a bad UX? It had got nothing to do with the digital product you design. Yeah. Let's say, for example, you bought it online. You got the ticket, it was good, it was on your phone, you went inside the cinema, you scanned it, but as soon as you started entering the cinema hall, user said, oh, you have to do a security check-in again. Was that a good user experience or a bad user experience? It was a bad user experience. So that's why I'm saying it is not about design, it's not about a specific UI, or it's not about colors. What it is about is, did you alleviate the user struggle, i.e. did you meet that part of the story? Now let's see one more example, very interesting. Let's say I had to book a movie ticket online and I had to reach that cinema hall in 1 hour and I had to book the tickets. But it took me about 2 minutes to book it and I missed, and when I reached, I missed about 5 minutes of my movie. That's also not a good user experience. That's where you say, the speed of your site or the time in which you complete a transaction on your website was very important to give good user experience. Now, speed or the nature of your website, how quickly you do transactions on your website, why it is important as far as user experience is concerned. That's why engineer needs to appreciate, if I design a site which loads in 3 seconds or which takes 5 seconds to click on the buy button, that's not a good user experience. Yeah. So let's come to step 1 back again. We've understood this is the user story. Then we are saying we define minimal viable feature. So we don't go about defining the whole feature with about 20 interactions in it. Let's define what is most important for the user. Taking an example of movie ticket, we are saying one interaction is choosing the movie, which movie I want to book the ticket for. Then you have choose date and time of the show which you are booking. Then you choose the cinema location, then you pay by debit card. These are the 4 minimal interactions which you need to have or which you must have in order to book a movie ticket online. We call this as minimal viable feature. And these 4 interactions comprise or make up the minimal viable feature. Yes. Now there could be hundreds of other interactions. You add it to the basket, then you go and search for movies and things like that, but that don't comprise within the minimal viable feature. This creates focus. This gives you an ability to go very, very near to the user need. Okay, so you have defined your minimal viable feature. Then what you do is you draw a sketch. Now, I'm not an artist. If somebody looks at it, oh, this looks crap, it doesn't look very good. What is this all about? Yeah. But if you look at it, the only focus when you look at this image, the only focus or questions which would be coming through all of your mind would be, what is that logo all about? What does that movie name mean? What does choose dates means? You will not think about picture. You would not think about logo size. You would not think about the symmetry of the diagram. What you would think about is, oh, there are 5 clear interactions which I can see in this diagram. If you look at the left one, the only thing where your thought will go, movie name. I need to book a ticket for the movie name. I need to choose the date, choose the time, the number of tickets, and then pay now. Those were the 5 possible interactions which you defined when you said, I want to define my minimal viable feature. Yeah. Now, how does it help you? So what it means is, if you're not an artist, don't get bogged down by, oh, I need to have a best possible Photoshop abilities to be able to be a good UX guy. No, it's not about designing the UI. What it is about is use Excel, use pen and paper, use a simple sketch tool, use your pencil, use your paper. It's all about drawing a sketch which highlights the clear interactions which you have articulated in your step one. That's your minimal viable feature. What does that give you? Draw it in no color scale. So you don't want to collect feedback from your colleagues when you define your sketch as, oh, this color is not good, the background doesn't look well, I can't read the fonts. No, that's not your goal. Your goal is about, does these interaction helps alleviate the user struggle so they can book the ticket so that they don't have to queue up at the cinema. That's what you're focusing on. Yeah. Now, when you focus on that, this is just real life actual example which we drew as a sketch, and then we went through iteration with various colleagues and users and so on to get immediate feedback. All the feedback, the first feedback came is, oh, you know what, I can't enter the time manually, I just need pre-selected time, I just need to know when the show is on. That was one of the feedback. So you look at it, when we move from left to the second sketch, which was also drawn in pencil, yes, we highlighted the times of the show. And then we collected a lot of feedback and said, when you say number, I've got two parents and one children and we are going together. How do I choose that? So the two boxes came in, which were choosing number of adults and number of children there. It is not about alignment, it is about getting the interactions right. And then we said, okay, this is very good. Then we reiterated and got value from or got feedback from other users. Just go, how would you do user research on this? You go to the cinema, show the sketch. If that's what you were presented with to book a ticket, will you feel good? You said, oh, pay now doesn't make sense to me. I didn't understand pay now, what does it mean? So those type of feedback you gather. Now, if you move from left to right, the right most clearly shows you, I had no idea. These were the users were saying, I had no idea how much I'm paying when I click on pay now. Yeah? So that's what you incorporate. Now, the idea is not about how this process went. The idea is, when you draw a sketch, what is important and what is not important. What is important is all your interactions are covered in that sketch. The completeness is important. Is it clear, or does it make it fuzzy with a lot of pictures and images and things like that? Does it distract user? So you focus on core function, and it is very easy to give feedback and define. Now, when you look at the screen, it will look very trivial, but you have gathered at least 10-20 feedback just on those boxes and made it much more simpler. And that's the idea of step two. Step one, define your minimal viable feature. Step two, draw a sketch which is easy to refine, easy to get feedback on, no color distraction is on there, and you're focusing on one core function. Very important. The third step. Now you have created your feature list. You have drawn whole of your sketch. You have an idea on how I'm going to draw it on a piece of paper that I know. Now comes the aesthetic elements of it and usability elements of it. So when you move to the next stage, it is called as clickable prototype. Now you define a prototype which people can use, touch, feel, and interact with. What is the importance of such prototype, such clickable prototype? The importance is that you can test your idea. What I gathered from the sketch phase, does it work when people operate on it? Because they will be able to click on it and use it as they would do in a real life situation. So how does it feel from end user perspective? Yes. Then what it also does is, when you create a clickable prototype which users can use, although it doesn't create data and transaction in the system, it is the interactive UI which you have created. It gives you a feasibility assessment. If I do it like this, will the engineers be able to build it like that? It gives you some sort of feasibility. Yes, the button can be placed there, the boxes can be placed there, people can enter data into it, people can use it. That's what you assess when you create clickable prototype. Then third thing is, it creates a common understanding between all the parties. So for example, when you are designing great products or great UX for a product, you will work with UI team, you will work with designers, you will work with product managers, you will work with actual users, and you will work with the stakeholders of your company. Now, when you work with so many users, the clickable prototype creates a common understanding. You take the clickable prototype, the visuals, the text, the other elements of the things, all of them sounds or mean the same thing to them. That's clickable prototype. It should never be a prototype, That's a funny saying we say. Everybody comes in and presents things and stuff on the slide. No, it doesn't need to be on the slide. Don't put pictures on the slide and ask user to use it or take them through it. Doesn't make sense at all, because they can't touch it, they can't feel it. They spent a lot of time and they gave you feedback around the sketch. They are looking for something they can interact with and give you real feedback. Yes, it works for me, or no, it doesn't. Oh, I struggle with this. So don't create a presentation prototype, create a real prototype, and use tools like, for example, Marvel app. These are some examples, but you can choose your favorite one. These are some of the tools which you can really use to create a very good and fabulous prototypes. Now, there is a fine element of or benefit of creating a clickable prototype. You can create or you can do a very effective user research when you have a prototype at your hand. So for example, one of the example of doing user research is, let's say we were building a product or designing the UX for booking a movie tickets online. We take this clickable prototype to the user and we ask user, what would you expect when you click on book now button? You ask that question. Now user will open up and tell you your imaginations, but you haven't clicked on it and shown to the user what is the end state I'm going to take you to. Before you take or transition user from one step to other, you are asking the user, what would you expect to see when I click on this button? What would you expect to see when I click on the drop down? What would you expect to see? So what happens is it acts on the psychology of the users, and it says that, okay, if I was to design it, I would like to see when I click on book now, I want to see that how much money I'm going to pay, for example. Now, when you click on that button, the end result of how you have designed the clickable prototype may not mean that you're showing the money on the next stage. But when user sees it, it'll say, oh, you're showing me the money now. I expected that, as I said. So whether your UX meets the imagination of the user, it's a very good way of doing a user research on a prototype. Yes, that's how you refine your UX. Now, what helps you do that is a clickable prototype. So step 3, build a very good clickable prototype which user can use. Obviously, the last and most obvious goal of creating a clickable prototype is you can create and do a very good usability testing. Now, there are tools and methods, but a topic for another discussion, how you do effective usability testing. But you can use clickable prototype to check and see how the user is using the product. Are they struggling at a particular interaction? Are they able to enter time and date? Or do they need something more? And so on. Yeah, that's step 3, creating a clickable prototype. The 4th one, very important and interesting. So the first 3 things takes you to the stage of creation. So you create a UX which you think you're very close to user need, and it is easy to use. The first 3 steps lets you do it. The last 3 steps help you analyze what you have created is correct, and also helps you realize that can I iterate on it very frequently. So last 3 steps is about understanding what you have created is right or wrong, and iterating on top of it. That's how these step 4 works. So step 4 is context. What is context? Has anybody heard of this term before in UX? What is user context? Very simple. User context is very simple, and that's what because users will not be around you as a UX designer all the time working with you. So the context is that you have seen and felt the user. You know what the user's state is while they are interacting with your feature. For example, I give an example of let's say a mom who was looking to book a movie ticket for whole of her family just 1 hour before the show. So you realize the user status, she's on her mobile, she's coming back from work, she's looking at her mobile and interactions and quickly trying to book ticket. What is that? How will she be interacting with the website? Or how will she be interacting with the feature? So you are close to the demography, you are close to the emotions of the user, you are close to what user state is while interacting with your feature. That's about understanding the context, right? Now, in much wider sense, you will be designing products not only to be used by just one user, you will design products to be used by multiple. Google is used by billions of people. So you will collect this context data in aggregate means. Aggregate means meaning that you will collect this data for number of users altogether. Yeah, so for example, let's look at on the left hand side, you see the interactions. On the right hand side, you see the context data, what you learn about your interaction. So when you launch your first minimal viable feature by using the sketch, by using the clickable prototype, what you learned? You learned that 80% of the people were booking the tickets on a mobile device. Yeah. So you learned that. That's the first context data you learned. Then you said 90% of the tickets were booked for the same day. Nobody booked tickets in advance, only 10% booked ticket in advance. Now, this does not mean that you are going to design a bad experience for those 10% of the people. No, that's not what I'm targeting at. What I'm targeting at is you are aware that what is the state of most of your users when they are interacting with your product. Yeah. Then you're saying most people book for the latest release. 90% of the people book tickets near to the location. So why is this data very, very important? Let me give you an example. So let's say, for example, you are searching for how to reach to Google for a startup office when you start for home. Now, if you know that most of the people are searching as from address as their own home address or their own location, then you can design a better UX. That's what Google learned when they launched Maps first. When they launched Google for Google Maps, they said most of the people at the from address will use their own location. So they gave you that box saying current location. A very, very small interaction of choosing your current location, but it adds so much value and saves maybe, I don't know how many billion minutes across all the users. So that's what it is. If you know the context better, you can design solution, you can think about solutions from user experience point of view, which will enhance the user experience when they are interacting with your product. The last one, if you look at 50% of the book tickets have amendment for time. Look how, I think they are very, very simple statements and learning, but how much information they give you is immense. So 50% book tickets have amendments. What does that give you? Most people, when they book tickets, they are struggling with choosing the right time and date. Yes, and creating a great user experience is all about eliminating all the user struggles which the user has. If all the struggles are eliminated, it is the best possible user experience you can create on your product. Yeah. So the last context data told you something was wrong, something was not working, or something user was struggling with. So that's the context data. That's step 4. Then the step 5. So what do you do? So what you have done is you have created your product. You have followed the good 3 very, very simple steps. You have created the sketch, you have created the prototype, and you have the hold on the context data for all the users using your interactions. Then there are 2 very, very important feedback mechanisms which you need to have or must have for every feature. Now we say that who is a good product manager as far as user experience is concerned? A very great product manager has not only got good hold of your data, but it has also got things which can get you the feedback from the users about every feature which you have put in the product. So the feedback, like for example, there are 2 types of feedback which you can focus on. One is explicit in nature. Here you are capturing users' explicit feedback on every feature. For example, let's take an example on the gov.uk side. I love, if you go and read about gov.uk, there's immense source of knowledge. They have transformed their sites very well. Some of the features and interactions are just amazing. So how do they capture explicitly that whether the user had good experience? They will always ask, these are survey forms. Yeah, but it is a very good user experience even on the survey form. When you have completed your interaction or transaction successfully, then they will give you this survey at the end where you can simply give your feedback and also give you what level of feedback you want with notes. Yes, not many people will spend time giving you feedback, so you will struggle with collecting a lot of data from various sources as far as the explicit feedback is concerned. But when users give explicit feedback, the good thing about explicit feedback is you don't have to guess. You don't have to understand and read between the data. You don't have to synthesize data and so on. It's very clear. Most user, 50% of the user clicked on, I'm not very satisfied with this service. Explicit feedback, act on it, no brainers. That's the power of explicit feedback. Now, not as I said, you will struggle with collecting data from explicit feedback because most users, if they have good user experience, they would never go and give you feedback. If they had bad user experience, they'll go and use some other service. There's so much competition in the market, any product goes. Implicit feedback is your own tool which you can use to see whether users are struggling and where users are struggling. For example, completion rates, very, very important metrics. How many users came onto the book now and completed the book now journey, clicked on the book now button and reached to thank you page? How many people paid for the ticket? Yes. Now, your completion rate, let's say is 50%, which is very big, but let's say it is 50% and it dropped to 25%. Something is going wrong on your website as far as user experience goes. Yes. Now, why it is 50% is and not 100% could be hundreds of reasons. For that, you need to go into the field and do user research. It might be not everyone books and pays ticket. They just search and randomly surf the site and then add movie tickets and don't buy it. So it could be that. But it could be that, you know what, when they come to choose the time, they can never find the right time. Or they can't enter more than 4 people as far as number of tickets they have to buy. And everybody is looking to buy more than 5 tickets, for example. So those are the type of things which you can drill down when you observe, oh, this completion rate has gone down. Let me go and drill down where the users are struggling. Bounce rate. Are people bouncing off from your site? They add movie tickets to the cart, but they don't go to the selection page. Yes. Number of clicks. So in order to reach to the final thank you page, do I have to click 10 times or all the users are clicking 10 times to reach to that final state? So all those are examples of implicit feedback. Those are the things by putting in the right analytics on your feature, you can measure and get the data. For example, how many people have used Amazon's one-click buy? Great. That was the attempt. That's how they learned it. The implicit feedback they used was the number of clicks to buy an Amazon product used to start with 20. If you read Amazon's book, they'll say there were 20 clicks needed to buy a product on Amazon. And today it needs 3 clicks. Uber started their journey with 3-click booking a taxi or booking a ride. Yeah. So it's all about reducing. So you should count every interaction, live and breathe the number of clicks or number of struggles user have to go through before doing it. Now, how do they solve it? They save the credit card, they save all your data, they save all the unethical things you can think of. But yeah, so they finally go on. So you go to the Amazon site, you buy it, everything is saved with them. User context, location, device, and challenges. You should all be close to that. Which locations people are using your product from. They can be only UK users, they could be global users, they could be using it from Asia. You should all be aware of where the user is accessing your product from. What are the devices they are using to access it and what are the various challenges they are facing. So all of this is implicit feedback. So when user interact, when you have enough user base which uses your feature and interacts with your website, you collect a lot of implicit feedback. Those are your 2 tools to really look at it and collect the feedback and synthesize what you need to do. So the great problem solving starts with identifying where the problem is, and all these tools is about identifying where the user problem lies or where the user struggle lies. Right, now if you look at it, then this kind of brings it all together. So first 3 steps, you created your product or you created your feature. Last 3 steps, in the last 2 steps, you looked at how I can collect the data which helps me refine and iterate. Now, if you look at it, it is amply clear from the slide. I'll let you read through it, but starting from the context and feedback. From the context, you gathered that 80% of the people who use my feature, they use it on mobile device. What is the solution you are going to offer? I'm going to put a mobile optimized view on my site or on that feature. Yes. What it helps you do is it not only helps you create a good user experience, internally when you work across cross-functional teams, it helps you prioritize stuff because you're supporting your decision making with the data, you're supporting your decision making with the feedback. You're not just taking your wishes, oh, I would like to develop a mobile app, but I can't explain why. That's what it helps you do. 90% of the people book tickets on the same day. Now imagine what a good user experience it is without any UI changes. There is a button there which says today. You don't have to choose date, you don't have to choose the year, don't have to choose the month, you just click on today. That's good user experience because most people come in and buy and book the ticket for the same day. Right? Now most people book the latest release, it's pre-populated. Yes. Now this is just an example, not to be taken literally, but what we are saying is how do you map a good feedback and a good data collected to the right design solution which you will create for a good user experience. Then you said, okay, you know what, 90% of the people who are booking tickets, they are booking tickets near to their location where they are at the moment. So I'm going to pre-populate, get their location and pre-populate the cinema hall which is near to them. Yes. All these are good examples of good user experience. A lot of people complain that 50% of the book tickets have amendments for time. So we observed the data and we found out that, you know what, most of the people who book tickets ended up changing the ticket time. Yes. So we knew there must be some problem. So now you're iterating on your UX, giving them opportunity to select time. It is big, bold, and red. So you're able to choose it. User is taking, and then you are collecting the feedback again, and then you're saying, you know what, I reduced my rebook rate or change rate by 20%, 30%, and that's how you are improving your UX. So that's about iterate and refine. So that finishes the sixth step, but I want to end up with a quote, which is from famous person like him. Says design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. So you focus on how it works, how you interact with the site. Thank you.
Thanks for the intro. That was really helpful. You mentioned about the context, and you mentioned, like, for example, with Amazon, they save all the details, and then it makes the checkout very, very easy. At what point do you decide, okay, whether you would like to allow someone to check out, or do you force the customer to kind of have the details saved prior to that, and then makes the checkout easier? Or is it always like, okay, the person selects the product, and then it comes to kind of checkout later on, at which point they have to enter the details? Is it better to kind of have the details stored prior to that, making a hard step initially, make it easier going forward?
Very, very good question. So you are saying, how do you decide which is my right solution? Yeah. Now, very good question. So see, what happens is, when we say we have to create a good or give a good user experience, we are targeting about some product metric somewhere. Your product metrics is how many people add items to the basket, and out of those, how many end up buying, for example. Or how many click on the button checkout and complete step 1, step 2, and step 3. Let's say that's your goal. Let's say today it is 40%, people are not willing, they are not buying it easily. Yeah? So what do you do? The first step about creating good user experience is identifying that there was a struggle. How do you identify? You get context and you get feedback. Yes? You know that people are struggling, not many people are completing, your bounce rate is high. But how do you design the right solution, which is your point? Should I keep the first step as entering my bank details, or should I put address details first? What should I do? Should I pre-store it? Now, in order to identify the right design solution, there is a problem. Then what you do is you conduct and brainstorm within your design team 4 or 5 solutions. Yes, it's the power of the team. So let's say you come up with 3 types of ideas like you gave. One says, let's store the credit card details up front, first time they buy a product. Next time when they come, we will just surface, do you want to use this credit card? We have it on our file. The minute you have options, what you do is you conduct option 1, option 2, option 3. Then what you do is something called as an A/B test. Yes. How do you conduct an A/B test? I know it's a bit technical, but what you do is you say, this is the idea in mind. Currently they are struggling, but 40% people are buying. I don't want to jeopardize the business at the moment. So what you do is you iterate small. For 5% of the user, you start saving the credit card details. And for those 5%, you measure the context and feedback. So then I'm not going to answer what is the right solution. Your users will answer. You will say, you know what, for the 5% of the users whom I saved the credit card details, the conversion rate went from 20% to 50%. But for the 95%, it still stays at 40%. That's the right solution. Let's say, for example, you design it for 5%, but nobody bought, nobody used the saved credit card. That's not the right solution. I don't know whether it answers your question, but A/B test is the way to go. Brainstorm the solution, choose 4 or 5 options which you think is a good solution, test it in the field rather than asking a highest person paid opinion, which is the right way to go. Yeah? Users tell you the right solution.
Thank you.
Hi, great talk. Just one question. So when you were talking about context and you said, given your data, 90% of, for example, your users enjoy your UX, while 10% might not. Would you focus on enhancing the user experience for those 90%, or would you try to expand that 90% to a higher, to 100% or so? Or would you split and create a potentially more customized solution where you have a specific UX for those 10% and then the general, or so one for 9% and then one for the 10%?
That's a very, very good question.
Thank you.
So when you collect context and feedback, see, a lot of people talk about it. I don't want even a single user unhappy on my website. It has never happened in the history of product design. Yes. One of the user, even with Amazon, will be unhappy. Oh, I called, I couldn't return my product, it didn't work. So why I quoted the example of 90%, those are not actual figures. But why I quoted as an example of 90%, you can design a good user experience and a product for maximum population of the users. That should be your goal. That is one. But it's not only about numbers, that I want every user to have a good experience, good motto and mission to have. But the other element of it is not only 90% of all of the users, but 90% of all user types. For example, let's take an example that within 90% of your all user base, 20% are working moms who book ticket only on Friday, for example. 10% are friends. Yeah? Those friends are, they like to go out together, college graduates, enjoy going out only on evening late night shows. Yeah? So what you're saying is you're categorizing the users and you're making sure that one goal is to create the right thing for most population of your user, but second goal is to create the right thing for all user types. When you learn more about products, you learn more about user personas. That's what we call it as persona. So you are designing right thing for most right user types. So you're saying my product works for working families, my product works for working moms, my product works for friends, yes, but it doesn't work for children that great, but I am okay with it. So do you see what I mean? So 90% can be broken down by user type, and by that you achieve quality as well as good numbers. Yeah.
What's your opinion on the platforms such as Wix or Squarespace? That I say from my point of view as a consumer, I can, let's say, sort myself in business out with I don't know, £300-400 per year,
Yeah.
and everything is there. So they have a number of recommended UIs and UXs, I suppose UI more. So why anyone would hire someone else other than those, let's say, platforms for the website? Or
Very good questions. I can't stop commenting. This is very, very pressing question. So for example, these platforms like Wix or GoDaddy who give you out of the box website, even a lot of WordPress themes gives you out of the box UI created for you. Nothing wrong in them. It's very good. That's where the differentiation between creating a good user experience and creating a good UI comes from. So for example, the example which I took, you had a very good experience on your digital product. I was able to click on book now, but when I reached to the cinema hall, he asked me to, I can't take your normal phone ticket. I want a paper ticket. So what do you qualify as job of a UX person? UX person job is not only to design good UI and interaction there, it's about overall experience. It's about displaying a Mona Lisa painting in a very well-dressed way in a museum. So for example, a Mona Lisa painting could be this, lying, but you don't get as much information about that. What experience you have is you go into a museum, you have a historical nostalgia about the things or great things which was created. You go there, you have a good summary of the painting, you know who created it, and history. That gave a good experience to the user. So Wix and all of those good platforms, they are very good. They should be used as an enabler to create a good user experience, but they are limited to creating good UI. But maybe in a lot of future or maybe near future, when artificial intelligence advances, these platforms will evolve to create good user experience automatically. For example, a young person comes to book ticket on your site. The site itself knows that what will be the most optimized interaction for this person using my site to book the tickets very clearly and get the tickets to the cinema. For example, at the end of Book Now success journey, it could have given me a downloaded PDF to print off now. That's what they would expect at the cinema hall to start with. So one thing is UI, with these platforms enables you or accelerates, you do it very quickly. But second is user experience, which helps you grow very, very closer to user need. So you know what you are solving is right for the user. Second is what when you solve it, you are going to see a very, very good product metrics, not only business metric, a lot of good product metrics, and a lot of good implicit and explicit feedback. So it's a very small element of whole of user experience. Does that answer your question?
yes, thank you.
Before you build new products, you get different personas, get them in the room, and give them give them a survey. Can you share this, your experience or some of the materials where I can get this list of questions that I need to ask before I start building the product?
Sure. There are quite good number of tools which you can use. So see, user research, as I said, we explored those 6 steps which you saw, but we didn't explore the middle bar going inside, which was called as user research. Now there are various elements of user research. One of the things is you have conceptualized or you have an idea in mind and you need to build a product. So you will get into a room and there will be number of questions which you can ask the user. But more important than that, if you search for number of questions, you will get it on the internet. But there is one thing which is more important beyond the questions and beyond what you need to ask the user, is the way you interact and the way you ask. So most of the people says UX is not a science, UX is not about product design, UX is more about psychology. And it's the right thing. See, I don't know, I'll recommend a book called Hooked from Niriel. It's very, very good if you design product which gets you hooked onto the platform. The more important element is how you ask. For example, when we said about the prototype and you said, how do I test prototype in the field? So before you click on the book now button, you ask the user, what do you think will happen when I click on book now button? Or you say, you're going to say checkout. When you click on the checkout, what do you expect to see? Without showing the user that screen. So that plays up in the psychology. For example, without restricting you to what I have created and showing you those things, what I'm asking you to do is imagine what will solve your need. So those are the type of questions. So I can share some things with product school and they can get in touch with you and share some questions. But what I'm saying is you need to focus on not the right questions, but how to ask the question in a correct way to the users, which will tend to them to open up, get you closer to the need. So I take an example, the industry has advanced from being a good business analyst to being a good product manager or being a good user researcher. Because typical business analysts in all the enterprises and corporates or even in a startup used to go and ask the user, what do you want? Now, if I was going to ask my daughter what she wants, she will ask the moon. Yes, but what does she exactly need is an art of understanding the product management. What do you need? And that you can't ask a person. You have to understand the need. So you can ask a person, what do you want? And they will always ask you, I want skates, which is more fibrous, they have got black tires, and they should be very sleek, they should be governed by a smartphone, and all of that. While what you need is a board with 4 wheels on it. That's what you need. So the art of that or asking question is ask the question which helps you identify what the user needs rather than asking what you want. Does this make sense? But we'll share some questions and things. Huh?
I've got a question regarding if for example, we are kind of going into some developing, expanding into developing countries, where most of the user base probably wouldn't be tech savvy. So the struggle is to kind of get from offline into the online mode in the first place. So are there any tips around, or how do we design a user interface to kind of make them comfortable? Even the checkout, simple checkout, for us it's very easy, just select a product and check out and put your details, whatever. For them, it's just like quite a number of steps, and at the same time it's just a new experience in the first place. So what is your advice regarding?
That's a good point. See, that's what we said when we said understand the user context. So one of the user contexts was that you have identified a user need. In a developing world, they don't have that fast of internet connection and that reliable internet connection, which lets them carry out a transaction in one connection itself. They might do something and they might break. Yes, that's what you're saying. How do you enhance the experience? Now, there are a lot of examples of that. For example, you can take example of you applying for a job on a website. You start and you click on apply and they present you first name, last name, email address, CV, your address, your hobbies, your interests, and by the time you have reached there, you say, no, I don't want to apply for this job at all. Yes? So what you can do is then that to on a mobile while traveling home. Yes? So I think those type of cases are very similar to the case where they have intermittent connection. What you're doing is you are not only in developing countries, here when you're traveling, if you go towards Southeast where I live, as soon as I pass via Blackheath, internet is gone. You can't book a thing. I can't even talk to anyone. So those are intermittent connection example which they experience every day in their usual life. So what you can do is then you design that, when you type in Gmail, do you have a save button when you're drafting the email?
No.
You type a word, it's saved. Yes? So you keep sending a small bytes of data. So I'm playing a role of CTO now again, so I shouldn't be doing that, but still. So you keep sending those small bites of data every second. And the computing is so powerful these days that you can do all of the socket programming to keep streaming all of that data once. So what happens is that you start, you enter your first name, you enter your last name, it's already saved. There is no submit button there, right? Now let's say you broke the connection. Then what happens is the server sends you an email. You left your journey here. This is a secure link. That could be a good user experience. They click on the link, they start where they left. Yeah? Very solution specific.
I have a question where, say if your company has products which don't have user interfaces,
It doesn't
if
have
they don't have user interfaces,
Yeah.
how would you go about designing the user experience for them? Like, for example, if you're providing services or like APIs, something else that the technical side of
Yeah.
something else it uses,
Yeah.
how do you go about researching those?
I said to Vlad, I'm not going to answer difficult questions. But that's very interesting question. So, when we talked about, so this particular steps, you're absolutely right. This is more about where there is an interface where you can design a sketch and so on. But there is a whole lot of topic. If you read, there's another book, How Do You Design Your API as a Product? Now, very interesting topic. But always remember, or you'll always come across during your product journey, that whenever you design any product, a product could be an API, a product could be a user interface, a product could be a machine kept. An ATM machine is also a product. Yeah. Some things have interfaces, some things don't. But every product is defined as something which offers a value to the user when they interact with it. Now let's take an example of API. We just designed a big API suite, so we've gone through this cycle. When you design an API, who do you think will be the user?
Other developers or
Exactly right. It will be developers or the people who are integrating with your APIs and so on. What do you think will be a good user experience for them?
have access to it very easily and quickly.
Correct. They can access the API easily. They are not bothered by security. When they connect to your API, they don't have to write 200 lines of code just to connect to the API. Yes. So all of those becomes interactions. When the non-interface product goes, the interactions becomes which is not visible, which is more struggle to the user. For example, let's say there was no app in the market. Let's take movie ticket example. You had to go to the cinema to book a movie ticket. You have to give physical money to the person sitting at the counter, and they have to hand you physical ticket. What do you think will be the good user experience? More number of queues, more prioritized queues. When you go to the thing, they have got change available with them on the spot. All of that counted as a good user experience because they have got all the facility and things available, which makes the journey very smooth. So that then you are so that part of the user story changes, so that I don't have to queue at the cinema for long. So I only arrive 15 minutes before the show rather than arriving 1 hour because I have to queue up in the long queues and they don't have enough facilities and things like that.
The only
Yeah.
problem that we face in that sort of area is trying to convince organizations to see actually value
Right.
in doing user research and that, because a lot of times they won't actually see value if there's no user interface and it's just developers using our APIs. How can we kind of convince them there is value in kind of using
Very, very, very advanced and very innovative ways now in order for you to prove to your stakeholders, because we've done it time and time again, in order to prove value to the stakeholders that user research is the way to go, even for the products which does not have interfaces, what you have to do is you have to be very, very analytical in nature. For example, let's say I was to design an API which was hosted on GitHub. I cannot give you your concrete example, but let's say there was an API which I designed which was listed on GitHub. And then you're saying the interactions in this language on my API is connecting to the API. Let's say querying which returns me training URLs. Yes, those are the two interactions which are there. The minute I change the code from 100 lines of code to connect to the API to let's say 10, my download on GitHub increased from 5 to 10. Now, how do you do user research? Don't start big. The only way to convince the stakeholder is show some analytical proof and data which people cannot challenge. For example, as I said, why do you want to design a mobile view of your app or your website? Because 90% of the data is showing me that people are accessing it from the mobile. Now, very naive and old example, but when it comes to API, you're saying that I have got a small experiment to carry out, develop an experimentation culture where you're saying I've got a small experimentation to carry out. I will change these 4 lines of code in my API, which helps user connect easily. And I am only going to trial it out with 5% of the user as a part of my user research. For those 5%, you get some data, you show it back. Collect feedback, show it back. So it's all about collect the data, show it to the users, which is difficult to challenge.
Kind of piggybacking on that, when you're going through this process of kind of ideating, how do you assess the value of a product feature?
How do you assess the value of product feature? Now, this is a vast topic, but I'll summarize that answer. See, product measurement is about, like good UX is about removing user struggles. Driving value are twofold. One value is what value does your feature or interaction gives to the business. For example, again taking example of Amazon, if 100 products were sold, they might make 1 million profit, for example. Yeah, that's business value which Amazon as a platform is creating for the business, right? But how many people came onto the product search page and how many people completed the transaction is what your feature and interaction value is. So your business value is something which is very tangible in nature. Your user value or user interaction value is something which you measure based on your feedback, which is explicit and implicit in nature. For example, when you say how do you showcase value or how do you measure value, what you define is a key set of product metrics. Now again, it's a vast topic, but what you say is I will always have 5 product metrics always with me. How many users visit my site? How many users use my feature which I have designed? How many users successfully complete the interactions? How much time do they spend in completing the interaction? Those are the 4 things you would find every digital product measures. But there is one thing which every product must define before they start going on a product journey. That's called as a key success metrics. For example, Amazon's key success metrics could be 2 things. One is how much dollar do I make? Or second could be how much time an average user takes to complete a buy on Amazon. Now, everybody talks about customer centricity. The real business who are successful are the ones who do not create or measure value on the business, who create and measure value on what sort of user experience a product offered them. Does it make sense? I think that's the measurement of the value. So you measure value of your interaction as a good UX or a product person. You measure value of your feature, and that finally drives the business metrics.
I wanted to ask, being also more in the technology side than the product management side, how do you, for example, I've been in an environment where the product managers themselves, because of the transformation that they've had in their role, they still don't see the value of the UX. And then it's really the development team trying to push into, what you're asking us to develop. It's not really useful. It's not really easy to use, even for us.
Right.
And we're trying to show that we need someone to look at this from the UX perspective, because we can create whatever you are asking right now, but we personally don't think that it's going to be the best experience for the user. But it's not, it's often seen as technology is not the one who decides that. That's what marketing and that's what product is for.
Great perspective. Does anyone work for Facebook or Netflix or any of these big billion startups? No. But when you work there, you will observe the most difficult job in those companies, if they are working on really valuable product, like for example, Google.com search, or for example, Amazon.com buy, if they are working on those products, the most difficult task is of one of product manager. And why is that? Exactly the question which you ask. They get challenged less by users, but more by their engineers. So if you again read the book about Google, which how the Google was built up, the smartest people in the rooms are engineers, but what people do is they just promote the wrong culture. They will box engineer into the technical role. That's why I'm a CTO and giving a talk on UX. Nobody relates to it. But never box yourself as an engineer. Engineer should challenge, and the hardest job a product manager has is to convince the engineer that it is the right solution for your users. So as an engineer, yes, apart from different cultural organization where the culture is different, the engineers UX is not single person's or single role's job. UX is everyone in the organization as a responsibility to create product which is good for your users, which people love to use. Every engineer should challenge every product feature before he builds it or she builds it. I would say that. So I don't know whether I have answered your question, but I echo your emotion. We should make the job of the product manager very, very difficult as far as user goes.